Hello and welcome to the Road Trip Sports Podcast. My name is Harrison Crook and I'm joined today by my co-host Oliver Gilmour. Ollie, how are you doing?
I'm good, Harrison. I'm super excited to get going with today's episode. We're talking about the beautiful Miami.
Now, it was very exciting for me. Last week, we had a bit of a chat about Green Bay, where your team is based. We're coming to where my team is based now, the Miami Dolphins in Miami, Florida. So we're going to chat all about the history of sports in Miami, the game day experiences that I had going to Miami Dolphins game and Miami Hurricanes basketball game. And then we're going to have our big chat about the icon of Miami. Now, this week, we couldn't actually come to a consensus, could we?
No, we couldn't. We had to even lean to the fans to give us some advice and let us know who they think is the icon of Miami. But yeah, we weren't able to come to a conclusion. I suppose we'll touch on some pointers today as to why we think our icon is our icon. So
yeah, it's going to be very interesting. And then we're going to reveal the results of our poll as well. So that's going to be very exciting. Now, if you've enjoyed what you've heard today, make sure to follow us on all the socials. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Road Trip Sports Pod. So you make sure to find us there. You can find our polls. You can find all of our fan question posts, as well as all the TikTok posts that you've been coming up with. You've been hitting those socials hard with all your content. With lots of videos coming out lately. Do you want to talk us through any videos that are coming up?
I don't want to give away too much, but there's some cool videos this week. We'll always touch on the icon of the week and their top 5 moments. If 5 is enough, we might deem that they only had a couple, but they were so iconic that we need to talk about them in depth. But yeah, there'll be some cool videos this week, and check it out. You might find a couple fun things there, and if you can't listen to the podcast, TikTok's always a good page to have a look at as well.
For sure. I've heard there's some marvelous videos coming out soon. Now, the way we've decided to structure this podcast, we like to talk about how we travel to different sports cities and what the best things are to do there, what the experience is like as a fan. Now, we're going to always start with a little bit of a fun fact section about the city itself. So Ollie is going to take us through Miami. Take it away.
No worries. So Miami is located in Miami-Dade County, which is southeast Florida in the United States. For those of you that don't know Miami, it's fast become the mecca for partying, beaches, and is now one of America's premier tourist destinations. It's a relatively large city. It's the 44th largest city in the United States with 467,000 people. But despite this, it remains the 12th largest urban economy in the United States, with that big tourist being a big tourist attraction, as I mentioned before. Can you tell us a bit about Miami from a sports perspective? Because I think that'll probably not a better person to get some information from about Miami than you. So,
now, from a sports perspective, it is such a big city. It's a large metropolitan area, so they've had a very big imprint on the sports landscape in the States. It's been the home to 10 Super Bowls in Miami, and it's actually tied with New Orleans for the most Super Bowls in one city.
Wow.
So it's got 5 in the old Miami Orange Bowl, and then it's also got 5 in the current Hard Rock Stadium, including a few classics recently. We've got the Chiefs versus Niners Super Bowl 54 from a couple of years back.
Yeah.
And we've also got the famous game, the Manning versus Breeze Saints Colts game, Super Bowl 44, with Porter's famous interception at the end, along with the onside kick to start the second half, leading the Saints to their first title. So there's been quite a few Super Bowls. Very good there.
Why do you think it's home to so many Super Bowls? Like, I understand New Orleans a little bit because they've got the Mardi Gras and all the celebrations, and they've got their individual streets where they can do parades and all that sort of stuff. Do you just think it's because it's a big party destination, or?
I think that there's lots of reasons. A lot of the Super Bowls you notice are held south because of the weather impacts.
Okay,
so
right.
you don't want a rainy Super Bowl. You don't want a snowy Super Bowl. You want a nice, clean game with nice weather. That's why you'll find a lot of Super Bowls held south. That's why New Orleans, being in a dome, and Miami have held a lot of Super Bowls. Miami as well is a big tourist destination, and with that comes the infrastructure. So you've got the hotels there, you've got the tourist attractions, you've got the flights coming in. It's a major international airport, so you've got lots of ways to get to the city. And while the area directly surrounding the stadium might not be necessarily the best, and that's why you maybe have seen less than in the past, it seemed like every second year the Super Bowl was in Miami. It's still such a mecca for entertainment and for the sport, for the infrastructure, for tourism. So I think that's one of the main reasons why you'll see a lot of Super Bowls there, even though the stadium isn't one of those premier new stadiums like you're seeing this year with the Los Angeles Super Bowl. In those new stadiums, you'll still see a lot go to Miami just because they've got the support there to hold a Super Bowl. They know how to hold it. They've had all their Super Bowls in the past.
Yeah, well, I check every year. They release it every year for a couple of years ahead, and I'm thinking, oh, come on, let's get one, Green Bay. But I sort of think their days are a bit numbered. As you mentioned before, just the snow. It's not a big tourist destination. Like, obviously, you do go there for football, as we mentioned last week. But it houses football, and
it doesn't have the infrastructure as well, Green
Bay,
for the Super Bowl. You need hotels, you need all the media that comes there, you need all the players, all the families, all the fans. While the stadium itself is big enough, it's got those bleacher seats as well.
Yeah.
Now, would I love to see a Super Bowl in Green Bay? Absolutely. It would be the coolest looking Super Bowl ever. And maybe it's an idea if the 100th Super Bowl as like a little event in Green Bay. I think that'd be pretty cool, but I don't think that they could feasibly hold the Super Bowl there without a lot of planning and infrastructure being built in some of those cities like Green Bay.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. And you've been to Miami a few times. Can you tell us a bit about your trips there and what you did and all that sort of thing?
Yeah, so I've been to Miami a couple of times. I first went in 2005. Our family went on a big trip around the States, and that's actually when I first became a Dolphins fan. Yeah, I've got a bit of a funny story about that, actually.
Yeah, tell us. I want to know. How did you become a Dolphins fan?
Yeah, so I went to Miami. We were going around all the cities in the States, and I wanted to support the NFL. Dad had his team. He had the Cowboys. I don't know why I didn't want to support the Cowboys, but I wanted to find a team for my own. And so I was moving around. I went to Miami. Thought the colours were great. Thought the weather was great. The environment was great. I really enjoyed visiting Miami and visiting Florida itself, going to all the theme parks and everything. So I really enjoyed my trip to Florida. We flew back to the West Coast, and for some reason I decided to be a Dolphins fan, and I decided to tell them after we were on the other side of the country. Now, for people who haven't been to the States, you might not know that a lot of the sports stores and a lot of the media is very region oriented. So it doesn't. When you go to a store, they're not going to have every single team there. They're not going to have your choice for every team. They're going to have the team that's in the area, and they might have sprinkles of some other popular teams around. Some of those major teams, major markets, like your Cowboys, like your 49ers, your Steelers, your Raiders, teams that are iconic and have that brand recognition. And you've got a lot of the popular teams as well, like the Patriots, and they're now starting to get a lot of Chiefs stuff everywhere.
Yep.
The Dolphins were never one of those teams. So we got over to the West Coast, and my parents were like, you couldn't have said that like 3 days ago when we were in Miami. We could have got you all the gear. And so I've spent years and years of my life now having to get stuff sent from the States, all because I decided to be a Dolphins fan a couple of days after I left Miami. But that's sort of my funny story about becoming a Dolphins fan. I love those colours.
Yeah, I found the same sort of thing when I travelled to the States last year. I tried to find some Toronto Raptors stuff.
Yeah.
And being a Canadian team, I couldn't find anything. And usually, over here you've got your Rebel, and you always find your Raiders, and you might even find a little bit, especially basketball. As it's grown in Australia, it's
really grown lately.
Yeah, you'll find a bit of everything.
Merchandise.
Yeah, you'll find a bit of everything. But in LA, when I travelled there specifically, I looked really hard and couldn't find anything. And if I did it was an old. They weren't new jerseys. They might have been like a retro Vince Carter jersey or something like that. Like they weren't as you said, it's pretty region orientated what they sell in terms of merchandise.
Yeah, for sure. So I became a Dolphins fan in 2005, and I've been a sad Dolphins fan ever since. I've seen my team go to the playoffs twice. Haven't seen them win a playoff game. So yeah, it's been an interesting time being a Dolphins fan, but it is what it is. So last time I went to Miami, and the sort of trip we're going to talk about a lot today was in 2015. I'd recently graduated high school, and I didn't want to go on schoolies. That's not really my thing. So my parents were like, "Oh, how about we go to Miami instead? How about we go on a trip to the States?" And I was like, "Yes, please." So we went on a trip to the States. We went to Miami, and I had to see a Dolphins game. So that was the one thing that I was like, we're going to the States, celebrate and finish high school. I have to see a Dolphins game. You, like, mum, dad, whatever you want to do around that, I'm cool.
Who'd you see play when you went and watched them?
So I went and watched, it was 2015. I watched the Miami Dolphins play the Indianapolis Colts. I believe it was week 16 in the season.
That's always dangerous.
It is dangerous, and it did turn out to be dangerous. Both of the teams had been eliminated at that point.
Yep.
Andrew Luck had been injured. So I got to see the quarterback battle of Ryan Tannehill-led Dolphins and the Matt Hasselbeck-led Colts.
Ooh, that's grim. That is so grim. Did you catch any other sports when you were there?
I did. We went to a Miami Hurricanes basketball game. We wanted to go see some more sport there. So we looked up tickets, and the Miami Hurricanes game, we got front row seats for I think $10. It was great.
Yeah,
definitely would recommend.
That's really good. And the one thing I always see about Miami in the news is Florida man headlines. You know, Florida man does this, Florida man does that. When you went to the football or basketball games, did you see any interesting supporters or anything like that?
There are some creatures. The diehards will always be there. I didn't really get as many in my section at the Dolphins game. But you definitely see a lot of interesting people around, and people are very friendly as well. I'm sure we'll get into the game itself a bit later, but I just remember I was I think a 17-year-old kid.
Yep.
And I'm hugging like 35-year-old middle-aged man and like high five, and my parents are sort of just looking at me weird, but I was like, I don't care. I'm at a Dolphins game. Let's live it up. So yeah, it was really interesting experiencing that with people who are so passionate about something that you're passionate in. But yeah, there was lots of interesting characters around Florida and lots of interesting experiences, interesting driving through. When we went the last time, we did like a road trip around Florida, and there's some real grim areas in Florida. It's a good experience, but if you're not ready for it, stick to the cities.
Yeah, I have heard that. Obviously, when we talked about Green Bay last week, it's renowned for its food and its tailgating. Is it much the same in Miami? Do they have a particular food like hot dogs and stuff that they eat, or is it pretty standard? And what's the tailgating like?
It's pretty standard fare. The tailgating is good, not great. I mean, I'm only judging my experience on a week 16. Both teams are eliminated game, and right. I'd say from what I've seen of it's the only NFL game I've actually been to.
Okay.
From what I've seen of other NFL games, the vibe is much better when there's something to play for. But there were still tailgaters there. It's your standard fare. It's your hot dogs, burgers, all the normal sort of stuff.
Yeah, see, when I went to Tennessee to watch a Titans match, getting a little bit off track here, but sort of incorporating what you said there.
Yep.
It wasn't that big of a tailgating experience because it's so close to the city hub, and people will just go to bars and then they'll walk over. So it's not so much that traditional tailgating. And I understand the stadium's far away from the city. So
it is, yeah.
Is it a day trip specifically for the game, or are there other things you can do there?
It's close enough. So I was chatting with my parents to sort of refresh my memory on it. And so we stayed at a hotel that was close to the stadium, and we traveled into Miami from there because obviously the big thing that we were going to see was the game. So they do have shuttles from the from a lot of the major hotels around the stadium to get you in there. I would definitely recommend staying near the stadium on game day, because the highways getting out of the stadium and back into Miami,
Right.
Notoriously very shocking. So yeah, I definitely recommend staying nearby if you can, because then you can get those shuttles. You don't have to worry about the parking as much, because the parking, they've got a lot of parking there, but it can be a nightmare. I remember we parked, we drove and parked. I can't remember why, but we had to park way away from the stadium, and I think we took a shuttle, then had to walk, and then it was, yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing worse. Is there any other... I know that there's other sports in Miami, but from your perspective, what are some sports that are really exciting to see and that you would recommend? And maybe even some of the stadiums there, because I've heard they've changed Hard Rock Stadium, as it's known, a few times, and there's the Miami Heat are home there. Can you tell us a little bit about the sports teams there and maybe some of the attractions?
Yeah, so there's quite a few sports teams in Miami. If you're talking about professional sports, you've got the Miami Dolphins in the NFL.
Yep.
You've got Miami Heat in the NBA. A lot of people, especially in our home country, Australia, know them as the team LeBron James went to.
The Big Three, yep.
Yeah, the Big Three. You've also got the Miami Marlins, who their ground is actually been built, their ballpark's been built on top of the old Miami Orange Bowl.
Okay.
So the Miami Orange Bowl was knocked down. The new Marlin Park was built on top of that one. And then the Florida Panthers playing the ice hockey. And they've also got an MLS team that's been sort of recent into Miami. I believe they're owned by David Beckham as well.
Okay.
By memory. But yeah, so there's sort of the 5 main teams. I'd say the 2 main ones nationally would be the Heat, because of their recent success, and then the Dolphins being a classic franchise in the NFL from their 70s and 80s roots. Yeah.
Yeah, I certainly remember the Heat and Miami Dolphins, of course, being a football fan as the main 2 teams there. I haven't had a lot. I do watch a little bit of NHL and MLB, but I haven't heard a lot from the Panthers and Marlins. I've heard a lot that they've got college teams there.
They do. So the college team that's pretty prominent in Miami, the Miami Hurricanes, a lot of people might have heard of them as the U.
The Bad Boys. That's what I've heard about.
The Bad Boys. Have you watched the U documentary, the ESPN 30 for 30?
I don't think I have.
Oh, fantastic. Definitely would recommend. It gives you a real insight into what Miami as a city was like in those 80s and 90s. But Miami U football is a very big deal in Miami. Football, it's very much a football city, between the Hurricanes and their storied success over the 80s and 90s, and then the Dolphins had their success from the 70s right up until about the 90s. It's very much a football city. It started to turn basketball a bit with the Heat success, but it's still very much a football city. Now, the Miami Hurricanes, people might know them as well. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson was a Miami alum. He played for the Hurricanes. There's lots of famous players in the NFL who walked through and played in Miami. You've got Warren Sapp. You've got Ray Lewis. Lots of really high-level football players played in Miami.
It seemed like a really good school in the 80s and 90s. Not so much today. I mean, it's still a good school. It's still a football factory, but it's not one of the top 10 schools for NFL players, I'd say, like it once was.
It definitely has been overtaken in recent years, but yeah, it's still very much seen as one of those prominent high school football teams, largely because of what they achieved in sort of the earlier decades.
Is there any tours or experiences that you did in Miami that are worth noting at all?
So it was really interesting. The year I went was in between the renovations. So the Dolphins have done recent renovations on Hard Rock Stadium, and they were midway through the renovations. It was a 2-year process, and I went in the middle year. So you might remember the classic orange seats associated with the stadium. It used to be an open top stadium. So at the point I went, they'd ripped out the orange seats. They'd replaced them with teal, but they hadn't put the roof on yet. So because of that, a lot of their tours were suspended, and it was much harder to get tours at that point. They do tours now, but what we did do actually, because I'd done a bit of research, me being a nuts Dolphins fan, I researched where the facility was, where the training facility was. So the day before the game, we decided to take a trip out to where the facility was, and it was attached to one of the hospitals, one of the universities in the area.
Were they training there at all? Was there anything going on?
No, there was nothing going on. We just wanted to see it. I'd seen it a lot in watching on film and watching highlight packages sort of things. So I just wanted to see what was going on. So we went there, we found the entrance and we walked in, and it was awesome. It was unreal. Just walking in, they had so many displays in cabinets, and this is just in the lobby sort of thing. So we walked in and we were like, hey, we're from Australia. Like, I'm a massive Dolphins fan. Anything you can do for us? just like, hey, what can you get us? And he's like, look, there's nothing really going on today, but we've got all our displays here. Do you want to take a look through them? And I was like, yeah, sure. And so I'm walking around a little bit, and I turn my head, and there's the Super Bowl trophies.
Ooh.
So I got up close and personal with the Super Bowl trophies.
So you're fanboyed for sure.
Oh, I fanboyed hard. We weren't allowed to take pictures. But yeah, it was incredible. Seeing the Super Bowl trophies, like reading the inscriptions and everything. Seeing all the jerseys on the wall. They had little lockers set up with like little mock lockers with like merino and all that sort of stuff in there with like their game day worn gear. It was incredible, and something that I don't know if everyone would get away with doing. I don't know if I'm sharing little secrets that might annoy people down the track if they keep getting people showing up. Now, their facility now is actually tied in with the stadium. It's actually at Hard Rock Stadium now. So I don't know if that same sort of access would be even available. But yeah, it was quite a cool experience seeing all the gear there. Yeah.
Yeah, well, they don't have if they do have a Hall of Fame, not a Hall of Fame as such, but if they do have a Miami Dolphins museum, I haven't heard of it as being a very prolific museum like the Green Bay Packers Hall of Fame.
No.
But it seems, from what you said, it seems to be a bit like that, where they show, they might have a few old jerseys and the Super Bowl rings and trophies, and that's really cool. That's something I really enjoy about each city.
Yeah, it's every city's sort of got their own identity and their own history, their own way of doing things, and it was a really interesting way to experience it. Something that we didn't expect. We just wanted to drive past and sort of see because they've got like the stadium seating for the old facility. They had sort of like where they the fans sit at training camp and stuff. So it was really interesting that we actually got a chance to go in there, and we saw where the players enter. I remember from all the videos and stuff where the players enter the facility. Obviously, we didn't see any players there, being the day before a game. There was no one there. They were all getting prepared at home. But yeah, it was incredible actually seeing some of those things like the trophies. I'll never forget that.
Yeah. I know you mentioned that they've updated and fixed up Hard Rock Stadium since you travelled there. And from what I know about Hard Rock, it's becoming one of those stadiums that's a bit of a mecca for music festivals and stuff now as well. I know they hold Rolling Loud there, and they do a few other events. But in terms of the actual stadium, have you got any sort of like comparisons or anything? Because I mean, I haven't seen too much of it. Is it one of those like square sort of stadiums? Is it a bowl? What's it sort of look like?
It is very much square, sort of boxy sort of stadium. My biggest comparison is is it called Bankwest Stadium now? The one in Parramatta.
Parramatta, yeah.
Yeah. Almost identical.
Right, okay.
With the corner screens, with the sort of rounded rectangle sort of look. I saw it and I was like, I had to do a double take. Yeah, I'd say that's almost identical to that one. If you're looking at a sort of stadium comparison, what it sort of feels like in there, that's probably the biggest comparison I can give.
Yeah, well, whilst we're on the stadium, talking about the stadium itself, and was there anything else about the game day experience that you wanted to talk about, or what it was like in the stadium itself?
So the Dolphins ran a lot of fan activities around the outside of the stadium. They had a whole like dolphin walk. I don't know if there was something similar at Green Bay, but it was like a dolphin walk. So they had almost like when you go to a Swans game in Australia, activities lining the entire way around the stadium. So I know the Swans, there's only sort of that main sort of concourse where they have stuff.
Yeah, on the Moore Park side. Yeah.
Dolphins game, the entire way around the stadium, there were activities to do. You can meet the cheerleaders, you can get your photo taken with the mascot, you could get autographs from old players. You could actually, funnily enough, they brought the Super Bowl trophies there.
Oh,
so
wow.
so I saw them twice, and that was I do have a picture with the Super Bowl trophies. I had to wait in line a bit longer for that one than when I visited the facility, but they got the Super Bowl trophies out. They brought them over for that one too. Yeah.
Do you think what it lacks in tailgating is sort of made up by all those activities outside?
It is, yeah. I mean, the tailgating is still good. It's still when comparing it to somewhere like Tennessee, I'd say the tailgating is still higher than that. There's lots of people around tailgating. It's not the Green Bay communal levels. From what you've described at Green Bay, I wouldn't feel as comfortable going up to somebody in Miami and asking them for a hot dog or something. But the around the stadium experience was really cool, and it sort of led into the main sort of hub of it was the Dolphins store as well, where you could buy your Dolphins merch. So we went in there and we spent ages in there. I spent so long in there. I got a custom jersey. I think I spent at least half, if not 3/4 of my travel souvenir budget just on Dolphins merch.
Yeah, I think to be critical of Green Bay, they sort of don't really have that. They have the pro shop. They didn't really have when you go to like concerts and even football games, they've got those little stands outside, or even those little trailers that have got all the jerseys and stuff. Green Bay didn't have that.
Yeah.
It was basically the tailgating, a couple of little things like you mentioned, and the pro shop, which isn't open during the game. So I believe it's open until halftime, and then they open it up. It's closed during the game at separate times.
Yeah.
But yeah, Green Bay doesn't really have anything like that. So I suppose that's different to what we talked about last week, that you've got those sort of little pop-up stores as such, if you're really interested in those as well.
Yeah, for sure. And it's great to have that own identity for things. Like they will never be Green Bay. It will never feel like Green Bay. But especially in a game that didn't mean as much, there wasn't that vibe and that sort of like everyone getting that atmosphere ready. So it was nice to experience those sorts of things. I think Green Bay being so relevant for so long, maybe that stuff wouldn't be as popular because people are just so ready for the game day experience, ready to get in the stadium, where a game that isn't as important, isn't as impactful to the grand scheme of things, it's nice to do those events outside the stadium.
Yeah, and whilst we won't touch on Green Bay every week, it's sort of just good as a comparison to what we talked about last week as well.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think now...
You think we're ready?
I think we're ready. It's time to get into our Icon of Miami debate. So if you've been following our socials, we posted a little bit of a comparison. That might give you a hint of who we're going to be debating, and I think if you know us well enough, you'd know which side we're taking as well. But I'd first like to just introduce our two other nominees for our Icon now.
Our finalists?
Our finalists for the Icon, first of all, is Larry Zonka. Now, do you know of Larry Zonka?
I'm not too familiar with Larry Zonka. I do know that he was... when I look at those old Miami teams, he was renowned for being for making those huge runs. And actually, you think of a guy running the football, he doesn't really hit anyone. He's the one that gets hit. But
yeah.
This is Larry Zonka fella, as you just mentioned. He was hitting guys. He would purposely run into guys to knock them over.
He was the hardest nosed running back. I've watched a lot of film. He was one of the hardest running backs I've ever seen run the football. So they had a tandem in the 72-73 Super Bowl runs. Even in 71, they had Larry Zonka and Mercury Morris. So Mercury Morris was sort of the faster, flashier running back. And then Larry Zonka was that guy, you need 3 yards, he'll get you 4. He will put his nose through somebody and get you those yards you need. Incredible running back, won Super Bowl 7 and 8 with the Dolphins, and was probably the star. Didn't win the MVP in either of those, but was definitely the star of those games. And the other nominee, one of my favourite quarterbacks to watch back. Unfortunately, I was never able to watch him in his prime. One of the reasons why he isn't nominated and in our debate today, but Dan Marino.
He is an absolute star. I'm similar. I'm not a Miami fan or anything like that, so I haven't went back and watched a lot of film, but Marino's in the conversation for one of the best quarterbacks of all time. I think the knock on him was that he just didn't win a Super Bowl.
That's the main knock. Whenever anyone talks about Marino, his tagline is the greatest quarterback to never win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And you start that sentence off, it sounds so good. The greatest quarterback to never win a Super Bowl. He was incredible. He was sort of almost the prototype of the quarterbacks we have now. And I think if he played today, he would be carving people up. He would still hold every record. Upon his retirement, he held every major passing record, yards, touchdowns, everything. I think if he was playing today, he would still hold all of those records, and he would have extended them so much further. With the rules favouring receivers as they do today, if he had those sorts of rules, incredible.
And he was not prone. I could say he was pretty prone to take a risk. I think from memory, his career touchdown to interception rate was about 2-1. So usually a normal Dan Marino game would be 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. But you knew on those 2 interceptions that he's just trying to win your team the game. No matter what, he's trying to take those risks. And that's why he was a Pro Bowler 9 times and won an MVP.
Yeah,
is that right?
He won an MVP 84 when he took him to the Super Bowl. Had a classic with Joe Montana and the 49ers. And unfortunately lost that game. But yeah, so many iconic Dan Marino moments. You've got the when they beat the 85 Bears, they knocked off their undefeated season. And a lot of people thought the Dolphins were going to beat those Bears as well if they met in the Super Bowl. They lost to the Patriots in the championship game and didn't quite meet the Bears, but everyone was waiting for Bears-Dolphins 2 that year. And that was quite an iconic moment. You've got the fake spike game, beating the Jets. You've got obviously the 84 season taking them to the Super Bowl. There's been a lot of iconic Dan Marino moments, but there are 2 names, when you think Miami sport, there are 2 names that at least come to our mind first. And I'm going to start you off when you can introduce your nominee.
Yeah, so my nominee for the icon of Miami and part of the debate today is Dwayne Wade. So Dwayne Wade is an NBA or basketball player that spent 15 years in Miami. He was a 3-time NBA champion, winning titles in 2006, where he was crowned Finals MVP, 2012 and 2013. He was a 13-time All-Star and is a member of this year's 75th anniversary team. Now, I think of Miami, I think of Dwayne Wade, and so do the Miami-Dade County Commissioners, who actually voted to rename the Miami County to Miami-Wade County in honor of Dwayne Wade.
Way.
I'm serious. For a week, and this is known around the NBA Finals date. He's also got streets named after him, and he's. I'd like to think he's one of Miami's most influential athletes.
Yep. I definitely think he's one of the most influential athletes in Miami's history. He's Miami Heat's all-time leading scorer, leading assists, leading steals. And yeah, he ultimately won 3 championships in Miami, brought 3 titles to South Beach.
Yeah, I think that's sort of where I believe he gets over the line from guys like Dan Marino, is that rings do matter, and he played during the franchise's greatest era. You could argue that 2 of those championships were brought by LeBron James, but he had such an iconic 2006 finals where he was crowned MVP, and he put up 35 points a game. Now, the next closest scorer after that was 13, I believe, and that was Shaq. So there's a huge discrepancy there, and he's basically carried the team on his back. He's known for doing that, and there's a lot of great Dwayne Wade moments.
Yeah.
Do you think I should get into the Dwayne Wade moments?
I think Dwayne Wade moments. So number 5.
So number 5 was the photo, and whilst the actual play itself isn't too memorable, everyone's seen that photo of Dwayne Wade with his arms in the air.
Incredible.
And LeBron James slamming it down. It's just such an iconic photo. And whilst it may not be the best play, it's just pretty much a standard alley-oop for those guys. But that photo that was attached to the play was just so huge.
I mean, a photo's iconic when Space Jam 2 has to recreate it with Lola Bunny.
Exactly right. Yes.
Absolutely iconic. When I think of that Heat era, that's the first thing I think of is that photo and that partnership between the big three, between LeBron James, between Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. I think of that photo, first thing that comes to my mind.
Yeah, I think that's the photo and the play so much itself that's so iconic with that Heat team, that Heat big three. So the number 4 moment that I've decided on was a dunk over Kendrick Perkins. So Dwayne Wade gets the ball, he drives baseline and absolutely slams it down over Kendrick Perkins. And with basketball, they're they're sort of very video orientated. So go and check out a TikTok after this. We'll be posting that on Wednesday morning. Go and check that out and have a look at these plays so you can get a bit of a visualization. But Dwayne Wade was a high flyer and he could really slam the ball.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Number 3, most iconic Dwayne Wade moment.
So this is another posterizer, another dunk. This one's over Anderson Varejao, who played for the Cavs during when LeBron played there as well, when they made their finals run. He was a pretty influential player, but he copped it on this occasion as Dwayne Wade slammed it down over him.
Yeah, for sure. Number 2 moment you've got?
This was a game winner in double overtime versus the Bulls. So Dwayne Wade gets the steal. He runs down the court, shoots up a prayer, and gets the game winner in double overtime versus the Bulls. Now, this moment, the celebration's actually a bit of a big point here. This was when Dwayne Wade jumped up on the bench, and if you can remember him slapping his chest and screaming out, and he's jumped on that bench, on that commentator's board, would you say?
Yeah. Commentator's board,
not so much the bench, but yeah, the commentator's board. And yeah, check that one out. But that was just huge. And hopefully a few people know what I'm referring to there when he's up on he's grabbing his shirt. He's just super hype. And that was a big shot too, especially in the circumstances.
Now, the number 1 most iconic Dwayne Wade moment is?
So Wade wins his first finals and finals MVP in 2006.
And you sort of mentioned that before, hey, how big of an impact he had on that team.
Yeah, this performance was arguably one of the best ever. And he averaged 35 points, 8 rebounds, and 4 assists during that series. Incredible. And that is ridiculous.
Ridiculous, yeah. And considering the next highest was Shaq with the 13 points.
And Shaq was old then. Shaq was washed and stuff and as such. And I think we'll get into that a bit later. I think we've got a question sort of on the D Wade era a bit there. So D Wade, one of the most influential people in Miami history. When I think of Miami, I think of D Wade. I think of him just smashing down dunks and playing during the franchise's greatest era and winning rings.
Yeah, for sure.
So would you like to take us to our
I've
next
actually
finals?
just got one question for you first.
Yeah.
Looking through the list of iconic Dwayne Wade moments, a question that people might have is, where's the other 2 rings?
Do you mean... I think
where are the other 2 championships in those moments?
They are. So the championship...
Because this is going to be my argument.
The championship wins are iconic, but the issue is that, as you said, it is an argument...
Moments,
well, that is true. That is true. But the issue with this is that Dwayne Wade, he was a second option with LeBron James. And of course, that's an argument. But they don't win any of those finals without LeBron James, especially... referencing the finals where they played the Thunder. The Thunder had their big young 3 of James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Russell Westbrook. I don't think they get the job done without Dwayne Wade there. And then against the Spurs, they only just take that one out. If you remember in Game 6.
Every single player on that team to get them by.
If you remember that big shot in Game 6.
Ray Allen.
Ray Allen from the corner.
Ice cold.
Absolutely huge. Yeah, and there's certainly... as we'll probably get into just a little bit, there's certainly arguments for and against Wade, but he had such an iconic career in Miami. He traveled to Chicago, his hometown, and Cleveland, where he both played 1 year there, but ultimately retired in Miami and considered one of Miami's greatest athletes today.
For sure. Well, I'm going to take you into my pick for the icon of Miami. And my pick is the legendary Don Shula. Now, for those who don't know, Don Shula, Hall of Fame coach, he's currently sits with the most wins all time by a coach. He had 347 wins as a coach. He had that with a 0.665 win percentage. So he won 2/3 of his games and won that many games as well. So a lot of people say, oh, Don Shula, he just coached forever. That's why he got the wins. No, he's still winning 2/3 of his games throughout his run. At the time of his last Super Bowl, he had the most Super Bowl appearances with 6, and 5 of them with the Dolphins. He took the Dolphins to all 5 of their Super Bowl appearances. He's a 2-time Super Bowl champion. Probably the most iconic part, and we'll get into this, undefeated. Undefeated, something that no team has ever done since. There's teams that have come close. The 18-1 Patriots in 2007 come to mind, but no team has gone from the start of the season to the end with all wins and have won the Super Bowl. So the 17-0 undefeated season, I don't think anyone will ever do it again. I think that if Tom Brady with Randy Moss, with Wes Welker, with all those pieces couldn't do it, I don't think anyone else will even come close. So he spent 26 seasons with the Dolphins as their head coach. And he's also the first coach of a team to 3 consecutive Super Bowl appearances, 71, 2, and 3 with the Dolphins. They lost to the Cowboys in 6. They went undefeated and won in 7. And then they came back and beat the Vikings in 8. They didn't quite go undefeated that year, but they still defended an undefeated season with a Super Bowl title. Incredible coach. Iconic. If he was Miami's patron saint for so long, and unfortunately we lost Don Shula quite recently, but one of the most iconic things of it, when you think Miami sports, you think every year those 72 Dolphins popping the champagne. When the last undefeated team loses in the NFL, the 72 Dolphins pop the champagne and celebrate being the only undefeated team in NFL history, and that's the main thing I think about when I think Don Shula.
Yeah, for someone that's not a Miami Dolphins fan, and I'm not real privy to his history as a coach, I think going through the top 5 moments now will probably give me a bit of context, and for those listening as well. So did you want to take us through the top 5 most iconic Don Shula moments?
Yeah, for sure. Now, for a coach to have iconic moments, it's different to a player, isn't it? So the player you've got, like Dwayne Wade, we talk about his dunks, we talk about all that sort of stuff. Last week with Aaron Rodgers, he had big Hail Mary throws. It's a little bit different for a coach, but these moments are hard to argue. So number 5, I've got the Hall of Fame induction. He had a brilliant speech when he was inducted into the Hall of Fame. Definitely one of the greatest coaches of all time. Number 4 has got to be defeating the 85 Bears. Now, the 85 Bears were undefeated up to that point. A lot of people thought they weren't going to lose a game that season, and they went into Miami and got defeated 38-24 by a strong Dolphins team who dominated them for the entire game. Walter Payton, Jim McMahon couldn't do enough to get them over the line against a strong Miami team, and it was a credit to Shula and it was a credit to Marino for an awesome performance by them. Unfortunately, they couldn't go back and beat them in the Super Bowl. They had a chance but lost the Patriots in the championship game. But yeah, incredible moment, incredible game. Putting a chink in the armor and ultimately stopping another undefeated team from being in the NFL, because I think Dolphins don't win that game. There's 2 undefeated teams in the NFL. Number 3 moment was winning Super Bowl 8, going back to back. They beat the Minnesota Vikings 24-7 in that game. And it was an absolutely dominant performance by the Dolphins to win their second Super Bowl back to back. Number 2 moment was in 1993 against the Philadelphia Eagles. He became the winningest coach in history. He'd go on to coach for another couple of seasons after that, but he became the winningest coach in NFL history, ending up on 347 wins. Now, Belichick is coming close to that. I think Belichick will probably get him.
Right.
Just with all those postseason runs the Patriots made has added up quite a lot. But it's still an incredible mark that Belichick is coming second, and he's still just under 50 away.
Right.
And after all those wins, after all those years of success, the fact that he's still so far away is a testament to how successful Shula was as a head coach, that a coach like Bill Belichick is still got a ways to go if he wants to catch up.
Yeah, that's right. Well, number one, did you want to take us through the top and the most iconic Don Shula moment?
So the most iconic Don Shula moment, Super Bowl 7. Now, Super Bowl 7, they're playing against the Washington, insert name here, and they were leading 14-0, and they brought their kicker out into the field.
Right.
And in a season where they were going to go 17-0, they were just about to kick the field goal that would have put the final score in the Super Bowl as 17-0 to win their 17th game of the season and go 17-0 undefeated. Do you want to know what happens next?
What happens next?
One of the biggest botches of all time. Oh my goodness. It was absolutely shocking. There was a botch on the field goal. They tried to throw the ball. The kicking team tried to throw the ball just to get it incomplete. It was picked off, run back, and scored. Score was 14-7 in the final. They could have had the absolute perfect send-off to the most perfect season in NFL history, and the Dolphins couldn't even do that right. But what a game, and the iconic moment for Don Shula's perspective. He was carried off the field. You see, that's the photo you see when you think undefeated season, you think the undefeated Dolphins, you see Don Shula shaking hands, he's celebrating on the shoulders as he's carried off in the greatest Super Bowl win of all time.
That's amazing. I think that sort of gives me a perspective. I'm not real privy to Don Shula as a coach, as I said previously, because I'm not a Miami Dolphins fan. And as a Miami Dolphins fan yourself, you're able to watch back his highlights, his coaching, those iconic moments. And probably for people that live in Miami and are Miami fans, he is much more of an influential individual than people probably give him credit to.
I think it's just the longevity. For him being there as long as he was and being as successful as he was, and it being remembered as the most, especially since the Dolphins haven't been good since he left. Since he and Marino have gone, we've had nothing. So I think that really paints it it puts it in perspective how amazing that run was, that was almost taken for granted how successful they were through that period. That the Dolphins were just the perennial team. They didn't quite win one with Marino, but they were just always there with Don Shula, and I think that's sort of his legacy. He was just a very good football coach. He prepared his teams well. He was from what I've heard, was a very hard taskmaster, but he got his what he wanted out of his players, and he brought lots of success for the Dolphins and for the Miami area.
Yeah, well, I don't think there's a wrong answer here, but we were unable to come to an agreement between those two. Not for the sake of having a dispute or anything, but we just think that, especially Harrison, he has had such a profound impact on him as a Miami Dolphins fan, and being able to watch that history and not having many Super Bowls since, unfortunately for him, but that is why he's had such a big impact on Harrison as a fan. But our fans did come to a bit of a vote.
They did
on our socials.
Do you want to reveal that for us?
Yeah. So the most iconic Miami athlete, as such, was voted Dwayne Wade. It was a pretty close one. I think Dwayne Wade had 50% of the votes, was it?
Yeah, it was 50% of the vote for Wade, 33% for Shula, and there was 17% for other.
Okay. And we had a few people...
I'd say those others, a lot of them would be looking Dan Marino sort of way.
Yeah, Dan Marino way. They might... Some people might put LeBron, but, you know,
yeah. And
that's recency.
Honestly, that probably split the vote from Don Shula. It's hard to separate. Dan Marino and Don Shula are the two Dolphin symbols, whereas Dwayne Wade is sort of that one symbol for the Heat. He is Miami Heat basketball. All right, so that sort of ends our icon sort of debate and sort of in-depth look at those two sports figures. We've got a couple of mailbag questions to address before we wrap up here. So, Joe from Newcastle has asked us, would Dwayne Wade have a championship if Shaq and LeBron did not come to Miami? Great question. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, we love these hypotheticals. And this one's difficult.
It is very difficult.
It is difficult.
What's your perspective?
I think he gets one. I think he gets a minimum of one.
Yeah.
I think he still gets 06. As I said, he was just above and beyond everyone else on that court during the finals.
Yeah.
They were the underdogs coming into the 06 finals. They weren't expected to win. And for those that don't know, they played the Dirk Nowitzki-led Dallas Mavericks, who were huge favourites coming into the finals. But Dwayne Wade just single-handedly won them that championship. And they've also got a great coach in Eric Spoelstra as well, who...
very underrated coach.
Very underrated coach. And I think we'll be talking about him a lot more when he retires. I'll also mention that Shaq was a little bit past his prime. He got that last ring with the Heat. He averaged 13 points and 10 rebounds, which is still no mean feat. That's still a good stat line. But I think they still get it done. I only think they get the one.
So you don't think they get LeBron years?
I don't think they get the LeBron years. When you think about the Lakers dynasty, the Spurs dynasty, you think about the one, you think about the two that they won. They only just beat out that big three in Oklahoma, and they won that Game 7 matchup against the Spurs. I think the Spurs get that matchup without LeBron, and I also think the Thunder get that matchup.
Now, the argument I'll make, though, LeBron, obviously, I'm not sure how much his cap hit was, but a large chunk of their free agent money goes to LeBron. They would have to get someone else, though. Like, you could say there's no LeBron. Yeah, that team's not winning. But they're bringing in other talent with that money. They're not just sitting there with however much they've paid LeBron and saying, all right, we're fine with just Wade and Bosh. They're bringing someone else in. I can't recall exactly who was a free agent at the time.
Yeah.
But they're bringing talent in.
So
And there was a very good team around. And while I don't think you get some of the players that were recruited there to play with LeBron, you've still got Chris Bosh, you've still got Dwayne Wade. It's still going to be a competitive team, and maybe they don't win a championship, but it's still going to be a competitive team. Chris Bosh, Dwayne Wade, and insert another free agent there. That's still a decent team.
Yeah, that's a very, very, very good question. Very, very good question, and very, very good point there from Harrison. The second question that we have is from Daz of Seam. And Harrison, you should be able to assist with this one. He asks, what's the go-to food experience when visiting Miami?
Yeah, so Miami, being so close southerly to the border, is very known for its Cuban cuisine. So there's lots of nice Cuban restaurants. And also being so close to the ocean, it's got a lot of fresh seafood there. So definitely seafood and Cuban cuisine. For food, now Miami is also very well known for its nightlife. I remember in our pre-show meetings, we were also talking about like the Gold Coast of the States.
That's what it seems like to me, the Gold Coast.
Yeah, so
that's what I've heard.
Very party lifestyle, so it's a very good place to go if you want to go out clubbing, go out, like see the nightlife. So it's more known for that than its food specifically. But if you do want food, I'd say the Cuban and the seafood sort of would do you well.
Amazing.
Now, we've got one more question before we finish out. We're almost out of time, but Rob from Warners Bay has come in with a question about the Pro Bowl. And
oh, this was grim.
So, what's wrong with the Pro Bowl and what's the fix is the question from Rob.
I think for anyone that knows this answer, kudos to them because they are in a bad way.
So we're recording this Monday Australian time. So we watched the Pro Bowl this morning, and well, to call it a football game would be an insult to football games. It was a chuck around to the park. Yeah, 100%. I think yeah, it was like, what was going on? How has it got to this point?
Honestly, I don't know whether it's the time of when it is, being so close to the end of the season. I don't know if players just are disinterested. I think they have to be at this point. They can't go out there and produce that and not be disinterested.
Yeah. I think it's also self-preservation as well. They're trying to make sure that they stay healthy. They don't want to do an ACL in what is seen at the moment as a meaningless game. It means nothing anymore. Especially you see that because all the players that don't play in the game, like you see all the big stars, they opt out because they don't want to get injured. That doesn't mean anything to them anymore.
Yeah, that's
if they're a player worth their salt, they're in the All-Pro team, which doesn't have a game attached, and it's so watered down because you've got all the people that opt out. So then you've got all the people that they have to fill in with reserves who are still also called Pro Bowl players. Mac Jones is a Pro Bowl player.
I know.
And he had a great season, but
He's not a Pro Bowler.
He's not a Pro Bowler. To call him a Pro Bowler after this season is it shows what's wrong with it. Like, I'm not saying he's a bad player, but he is not one of the top 3 players in the AFC right now at the quarterback position.
Yeah, and Rob, whilst your question is a hard one to answer, I think they've got to do something like the NBA. So the NBA for the past few years has been sort of a bit similar. The players sort of run around and don't do much for 3 quarters. They just, get their flashy dunks up, shoot some threes, and then once the game becomes a contest, they actually start trying. But this year, the NBA has introduced the Kobe Bryant Memorial Trophy, which will be awarded to the All-Star MVP.
That's going to help.
And I think that's going to help. So maybe they introduce something like the Sean Taylor Memorial Trophy, or just give the players something to play for. Give them a bit of pocket money. I don't know. They just need to do something.
I think you've hit the nail on the head with the second part there. They're not getting paid enough to potentially get injured and affect their career. If someone does an ACL injury and is out for a season because of a Pro Bowl game, they are losing money. Their team is not benefiting from it. In a contact sport like that, it's so hard to play it half-baked. And what you've seen today is what's been coming for a lot of years, because when I play football, I've always been told if you go 50%, you're more likely to get hurt than if you go 100%.
But they weren't going 50%. That was 10%.
No, but that's what they're doing. They're not going 50% because they know they get hurt. They're going 0. Because 0, you're not doing anything to get yourself hurt. 50 is when you get yourself hurt. I think the game should be scrapped.
And you know what's bad?
The problem is the money. Money will mean it will never be scrapped, but I think have your skills competitions. I really enjoyed the Madden yesterday, the Madden tournament.
Yep.
I think have those, announce the teams. It's a great accolade. That's it.
See, whilst you mention it's an accolade, and you think of when we talk about the NBA GOAT discussion, we refer to LeBron James, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, etc., etc., etc. And All-Star MVP and All-Star appearances are mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
That is mentioned in the discussion, and I don't feel like it's the same for the NFL. It's a consolation. It's like
it used to be. We talked about it before with Jan Marino, 9 Pro Bowls. It used to be. It used to mean something. It doesn't anymore.
It does.
When Andy Dalton is a Pro Bowler, it means nothing.
When Mac Jones is a Pro Bowler.
I mean, time will tell with Mac Jones. He might turn into something, but I think the jury's out on Andy Dalton there. I don't think he deserves to be considered among Patrick Mahomes, among the Tom Brady's, Aaron Rodgers. I think there's a lot wrong with the Pro Bowl, and there's no easy answer, is there?
No, I don't believe there is.
Well, I think that's just about it from us. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Next week, we're going to stay home.
We are. And this is going to be an exciting episode for Australians, specifically for a lot of AFL fans, for a lot of NRL fans, for a lot of Australian sports fans. Where are we heading to, Harrison?
We are heading 2 hours down the road to Sydney, Australia. So we are going to Sydney this week for the Road Trip Sports podcast. Now, I know we've got a lot of Australian listeners, so if you've got any fan questions, there's going to be fan question posts throughout the week to collect your questions. If you've got anything you'd like to share with us, any stories, moments that you've experienced as a sports fan in Sydney, make sure to let us know. We're on all the socials, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, at Road Trip Sports Pod. So make sure you get in touch with us there, and we will answer any question you've got and share all your stories, because we want to make sure that this podcast sort of represents the whole fan experience, not just our own. So we'd love to hear from you. That's it from us. Make sure you check out the TikTok as well. We've got lots of videos coming out this week. My name's Harrison Crook. This has been Oliver Gilmour, and have a great week.
See ya.